So anyway, I'll just give some other updates from NERSC. I've already talked about containers everywhere, and then I talked about the workflow. So the other thing I was going to mention is this larger IRI effort, which is a little bit related to the second bullet, and then just some updates on, container support at NERSC. So just, we're continuing to support Podman HPC and Shifter at NERSC. I would say the development in Shifter is really at a crawl. I don't think we've done anything over the last year, but we're still doing module updates, which I'll show a little bit more detail on the next slide. And then Podman, we're still doing active development there, although our attentions have been more on the in other areas recently, so there hasn't been a lot of change. And then we continue to meet regularly with Red Hat on the Podman work, and so Podman HPC is like this thin wrapper around Podman, just mainly to inject certain environment variable, like command line options. Really, it's just building up this big, long, heinous command line and then passing it through. But we've been giving them feedback, and where it makes sense, they've adopted some things. So for example, they added these module kind of capability to their configuration files, and then they kind of fixed some weirdness about the preserve FDS, which I'd never even heard of before until we were trying to do, I think, PMI support, and that's when we ran into it. And then we continue to do, for Podman HPC, the things that I've kind of got on my list that I want to work on are some instrumentation so that we can track usage. With Shifter, we were able to kind of keep track of what images were used and see what users had used it, and we've lost all that visibility right now with Podman, so we want to get that back, because it helps us understand just how much activity we're getting. Podman HPC, one of the things it does is it squashes the image and puts it on the parallel file system, similar to like what Singularity does and what Shifter does, and Soros, they all do it, right? So it works today, but it's got it's ugly in some spots, so we've got some improvements we're trying to do there, and then just some better error handling. So hopefully over the next year we'll get to those. This is just a list of, I don't know what to call these things. It's within Shifter and Podman we have modules, which are kind of like collections of things that users can enable for MPI support or GPU support. So this is just a list to give you an idea of what we're currently kind of supporting, and you can kind of deduce what these are from their names. So I think CUDA MPitch is the one that has like the optimized one that works with the Cray MPI libraries. CVMFS is for the CERN virtual file system. GPU support, obvious. MPitch support is kind of the basic one. You'll notice we've got nickel in both of these. And there's like a new nickel plugin one, and I think we're going to try to do that, because that'll mean we don't have to keep updating it as much. And then we've got some modules in there for OpenMPI support as well. Okay, and then the other I wanted to bring up was security challenges. So I don't know how many other sites were affected by this, but now it's public enough that I can sort of say, like, we discovered this. Like, we went and did something, and we noticed that we were able to modify something that we should not have been able to modify, right? And it was just, and at first when one of the people reported it to me, I'm like, nah, that's got to be a mistake. You just thought you did something. And then when I looked, I'm like, oh, man. So in this case, it wound up being a bug sort of in the how user namespaces made its way through when Luster was in the loop there. And it was a regression, I believe, as well. So I don't think it had been there for forever. They changed some things, and then it introduced it. Took a long time for us to get the fix, like a month or so. And this kind of worries me, because if we depend on this stuff, we can't deal with that kind of impact for that long. So anyway, and luckily Shifter was not vulnerable to this, because it uses a set UID. It doesn't use user namespaces. So we just told everybody, well, if you really need containers, go use that. But down the road, we really want to move away from this. So this does worry me, because every year it seems like there's at least one user namespace bug. And it's not really user namespaces. Usually it's like just something in the hemisphere of it, and the fix is always like, well, just disable it, right? So it's a challenge. The other thing I just wanted to mention that's kind of going on, and there's a container element to it here, is there's within the DOE, there's this effort called IRI. So DOE runs a lot of user facilities, right? So this is both computing facilities, it's, you know, light sources and, you know, InSim, you know, like electron microscopes and, you know, all sorts of observatories. And they want to be able to couple these in with the computational resources in a way to be able to enable new use cases. So there's this effort called IRI that is trying to, kind of a larger project to try to connect and make it possible to use, for users to move between these resources in a more seamless manner, or for data to move more seamlessly across those. And so this is still an evolving thing, but they went through, they're kind of going through this process of trying to identify science patterns that they want to support, and then kind of practice areas, sort of areas where we need to develop new capabilities. And so this is time-sensitive ones where they have real-time requirements, data integration patterns where they want to, you know, integrate data from a number of different sources, long campaign patterns where, you know, it's maybe decadal studies or something like that. And then here are some of the kind of practice areas that they need to address. You know, so for example, there's security ones and workflow automation. So the ones around workflow automation and portable and scalable solutions is where containers are probably going to play a role. Anyway, that's it.